All right, everybody, let's all take a deep breath. Gabe Landeskog took the ice at practice. Oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God.
You're Locked On Avalanche, your daily podcast on the Colorado Avalanche. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, everybody, welcome to the Locked On Avalanche podcast. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Chris Maselli. With me, as always, Mr. Shaggy Von Doom, Kyle Sullivan. Thank you for tuning in, making it your first listen of the day. Always appreciated. Make sure you're following us on our social media outlets, LOPN_Avalanche on Twitter X, Locked On Avalanche on Instagram, Threads, questions, comments, concerns, opinions, LockedOnAvalanche@gmail.com. And follow us over on our YouTube channel. Hit subscribe, get notified when a new show goes live. Definitely subscribe to our subtext. Link to that is in the show notes below. And when you do, you become a very special insider for Kyle and myself. Talk to us one-on-one. We get your thoughts on everything Avalanche, which we share on this very podcast. All right, we're going to dive into the road trip because that begins now. We talked about the schedule at the beginning of the month. We're going to kind of focus in on this road trip, what kind of maybe like predict it, I guess, what we think it's going to, how it's going to go, because how the month started and, you know, is a little bit different for where we are now.
Mm-hmm.
Feeling good right now being Avalanche fans. So we'll talk about that. Because of the game yesterday being so late, we didn't talk about it. So we will discuss the game against the Vegas Golden Knights, win by the Avalanche, of course. But we are going to start with some pretty big news, man. I mean, Gabe Landeskog is on the ice. I don't think anybody really expected this, right? You don't really know when to expect it, but if they've been saying all along, it's possible he could return for the playoffs. It's possible. So if that's the case, stuff like this, should be happening relatively soon. So he did take the ice very, we are at the beginning stages of all this. Baby steps. But
literally and figuratively.
Yes, but just seeing him in the gear, hit the ice, very just slow movements around. It got Avs Nation pretty excited for now. It's maybe the most popular ginger skate I've ever seen in my life when it comes to Colorado Avalanche.
I literally, when this news came out, I did a spit take. I was at work and I saw the video of him skating on the ice, and I thought it was a dream. I thought it was surreal. It was one of those I had to check. I was like, there's no way this is happening now. This had to be from a couple years ago.
Well, the way that the Avalanche posted it to social media was just a picture of him, and it said like, hey, Captain, or something like that, 92. And I just thought, my first thought was like, they just put an old picture up of Landeskog day off, but no, that was a few minutes earlier that they took that picture.
And it's what it had to take was 3 football head coaches, legendary head football coaches, to lose their jobs for all that power to go away for the return of Gabe Landeskog on the ice. and it's been monumental. Everybody, it's wonderful to see the elation, like even just non-Avalanche related like hockey members just giving stick taps to Landeskog, like hitting the ice, even though I had like one of those Bo Byram moments where there's a video of him skating and he takes this really tight turn. I said, no, just straight lines, buddy. Straight lines. Man. Like he took a really tight turn. I was like, we're going very slow with this, but no, this is what you want to see. But then you're in the back of your mind, you're like, oh, please just wait till the playoffs, buddy, because money.
But the thing, I can't imagine he's going to be ready before the season. Like it is playoffs or nothing for this year. Yeah, salary cap is potentially a reason for that, but I just don't think he's going to be ready. But we have been here before, Kyle. It was almost a year ago. I think it was in February of last year when he started, getting back out on the ice. True. And I think he looked This is stupid saying this. He looked better in this skate than he did the skate he did last year. The one he did last year, I mean, he was very just slow, very, very slow. This one was slow too, maybe a little bit more of an uptick than the one last year. And then what happened? And then we have, you had a setback, you had another surgery, and you're out for the following year. So we have been here before. And I will go back to something that Chris McFarland said a couple months ago. I think it was in like November. And that was really the first time that he came out and said, like, there's a possibility if he comes back, it could be for the playoffs. But he said, if there is any setback, we're back at square one.
Yeah.
With this surgery. So the fact that he is where he is right now, clearly there have not been setbacks. Now, that does not mean that what's ahead is just smooth sailing, but it is, I mean, it's great to just see him out there, but it also means things are progressing the way that the Avalanche and him want them to progress. They haven't had setbacks, because if we did and we heard about it, he would not be out there, and we might be talking about another surgery. So it's really, really good to see him out there for a number of reasons.
Yeah, and this is why you should subscribe to us on YouTube, because for the next 25 minutes, we're going to break down this video of him skating compared to last year, and we're going to John Madden circle his techniques in both. Look at there, boom.
If you're on YouTube, I mean, that's just a beautiful sight, man. That all we are not trying to make this look good on YouTube. We're just throwing them up there because it's just awesome to see Gabe Landeskog in a blue sweater, nonetheless. Yeah.
And you mentioned like Chris McFarland's comments about if there's any setback, we're back at square one. It's one of those that, again, I have watched that video, probably a couple of those skating videos of him today, a couple times. He hit that ice with some confidence, which means,
well, yeah,
he's been skating somewhere that cameras have not been around, which is to be assumed.
Mm-hmm.
But to be on this level, knowing there are going to be cameras there, he's confident in his progression. He's not going to put this out there just for a skate and then pull everything back. If there was any kind of doubt, he would still keep this off the ice where there's no cameras.
Great point.
So that's something we can look forward to. We don't need you back until we'll talk to you in the playoffs. It's great. You could skate around all day long. I just take your time, please.
And he will. I mean, I think you missed 2 full seasons, and I think him and the Avs know the severity of this.
Yeah.
So the last thing on my mind is that they are rushing him back. I don't even think that's that phrase is not in anybody's vocabulary right now. They are going to, and here's the thing, like, everybody's got the playoffs on their mind. That might not happen. Right. And if it doesn't happen, that's fine. It's completely fine. Then he has that extra time in another full off season to get right. And then if it doesn't happen after that, then we're having a different conversation here. But I know, like, throwing potentially, it could be back for the playoffs out there to the fan base. That's just, the expectation is he'll be back. Just keep it in the back of your mind that he might not be. And if he is not, it's okay. It really is okay. But man, can you imagine that boost? I mean, this is giving them a boost anyway, right? That team has got to have some endorphin high right now. It's just seeing him come out on the ice, skating around. I mean, he's been around the team for the past few weeks, but now on the ice, in gear, skating around, even though he's by himself on his own side of the ice, and his team is starting to really click. Seeing your captain back, that's got to elevate the spirits of this team. How can it not?
I would send him down to Loveland.
For what?
Let him take his time down there out of the public eye. Like, and it's kind of
I think
a little bit of
waivers for
just like it's kind of joking half and half, because the team, and we're about to talk about that Vegas game, that was an incredible effort. And let Landy do his recuperating, but we don't need that in the back of the mind right now. We know it's coming eventually, hopefully, theoretically, But that doesn't need to be the story of this team right now, because don't look now, this Colorado Avalanche team might be, I mean, they just, with this Boston game and Vegas, I think they might be finding their form.
Oh, they are. They absolutely are. So I don't know. I think there might be. I don't know if there's a waiver exemption or not for an injury, like an injury, like to send a guy down.
Just call it a rehab assignment.
I think that it is something like that. I think you are allowed to do that. I'm not 100% sure, but fire away in the comments if you know the answer to that. So just one, imagine if like a travesty happened on the ice and he's on the one end of the ice and kind of some other guys are skating on the other end and some guy like blows a tire and just goes careening into like Landeskog. Like, oh, that guy would be on the first plane out of Denver, paid for by fans of the Colorado Avalanche.
Steve,
can you imagine that
too?
Oh my God, that would be a curse of all curses right there. But I'm knocking on all types of wood right here. That's not going to happen. Everything is safe, but just imagine. Jeez. I want to say he's back in a sense he is, but it's yeah. Nobody was really expecting this. So when that popped up and it triggered and the dots connected, like, oh, this is now. Yeah. What is this about? Really got you fired up as a fan. So I can only imagine how the players are feeling. So the Avs themselves, like Kyle said, like they're started. It seems like they're starting to come around and at a good time. Is it like January just seems to be the month for the Avalanche to really kind of hone their game, and they're going to have to because they're going out on the road for a nice stretch. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But first, we're going to talk about the last game before this road stretch, and that was just the most recent game, Avs and Vegas. Very well played game by Colorado. So we're going to talk about that coming up next. First, we're going to hear from Sleeper and the Sleeper app. Kyle, once again, is scanning the internets and interwebs to find high and low a daily fantasy app better than Sleeper, and I'm still wondering if you have found one yet, sir.
I have not.
He has not, because we want to remind you that you could win big playing daily fantasy hockey on Sleeper, the official daily fantasy app of Locked On NHL and our network and the Locked On Podcast Network. Sleeper is our number one choice for daily fantasy sports and especially daily fantasy hockey, because with Sleeper, you can win 100 times your cash in daily fantasy hockey contests. Next game up for the Avalanche is, of course, against the Toronto Maple Leafs. So who is your sleeper for this game, sir?
I believe this is going to be a hot game for Nathan McKinnon.
Gotta love it. Going into Toronto, big beasts over there as well. I think he steps up for this game too. I like it. So all you have to do is pick whether studs like Nathan McKinnon will record more or less. Then there's sleeper projections for things like goals, assists, saves, plus, minus, and more in any given game. So use the promo code LOCKEDONNHL and you'll get up to a $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. That code again is LOCKEDONNHL. See Sleeper's terms of use for details and locational availability. All right, the Avalanche continue to play well, man, and this game against Vegas kind of speaks to where we're kind of expecting them to go and expecting them to do on a nightly basis. Maybe that's unfair, but they did this to themselves. So a 3-0 win over Vegas. And yeah, like you said, like going into this trip, which we'll talk about next segment, it's exactly what you wanted. Like, the last two games, you didn't like the game against Boston. You wanted to take care of business then because you had Vegas waiting. And even though Vegas has been struggling a little bit, they're Vegas. Like they're still going to be a good opponent. So you wanted to take care of business in Boston to prepare for Vegas. And then you can, roll that over into the next couple of games. You want to take care of Vegas because you got Toronto waiting. So far they've done it. And this stretch that we keep calling like the hell stretch so far, with the exception of the Florida game, and you're always going to have a dud in there. The Avs have looked good, but in this Vegas game, I thought this was, man, like the Boston game might have been like the most like fun game to watch. The Vegas game might have been, God, it's got to be close to maybe one of the most dominant games. Only 3-0, but they really kind of just they were in command and in charge for the majority of this game.
Could you imagine if you were in a rocket ship and you flew to the moon at the beginning of this week, and then you came back, and I told you, I'm glad you're back. Gabe Landeskog's back on the ice. Georgiev had a shutout, and the Avs beat the Vegas Golden Knights without a goal from Nathan McKinnon or Mikko Rantanen. You'd get right back in that rocket ship and fly to the moon.
And Georgiev had a shutout. I don't know if did you say? I didn't hear you say.
Yeah,
if you said that or not. Okay.
Yeah, Georgiev had a shutout. You had a
Okay.
goal. They shut out the Vegas Golden Knights, defending Stanley Cup
Yeah.
champion Vegas Golden Knights, with a goal, 2 goals from Nuke and 1 from LOC. You would say I'm crazy, and then you'd say, "Is there videos about this Gabe Landeskog appearance?" And I would definitely show you.
Yeah.
But no, it's what you want to see. And also, we had some Ross Colton on that second line action. There was a lot of movement. I really, really, really enjoyed what I saw. That, and honestly, when you step back a little bit, when you think about the last time these two teams played, Colorado was on the opposite side of the shutout. That was the 7-0 Vegas game.
Yep.
And talk about an improvement in that stretch.
Yeah.
You can see how this team's building, and we're going to get to that road trip, but this is exactly a win over Boston, a win over Vegas in really good fashion. This is what you want to see.
Yeah, you're hitting the halfway point of the season, so this is where you want to be. You want to be playing your best hockey in like the final stretch, obviously, right? But you want to be playing as good of hockey as you can be right now. You're halfway through the season. You want to start rolling. You don't want to be figuring things out still, and then carry that, and then like the last month of the season's like, oh, now we figured it out. You're figuring it out now, and it seems like you have, for the most part, done that. You just got to get the goalie situation. You want to see more of it. He's got 2 good games against 2 good opponents. You want that to continue. But overall, like this is again another January for the Avalanche. I mean, I know it's only the first month or week and a half into the month, but it seems like they figure things out for the most part right around this time of the year, which is what you're supposed to do. Look at the team that you played, Vegas. Look how they started the year. And again, we had this conversation. Like when teams start the year hot, everybody just holds on to that for the duration of the season, and forgetting like, oh, there's ups and downs through a full season. And Vegas is going through that right now. Yeah, they've had some injuries, but they the way that they started the season, not how they're playing now. So, I'd much rather have what the Avalanche went through early on and how they're playing now. You'll love to see it. They were in command for most of this. The second period was just, it was all them. But it was, it wasn't like they had the game locked up in terms of the score. And that's where, you had the Logan O'Connor goal, which is great. The 2 Nuke goals, which were great. And then 1 pass from Mikko was just, fantastic. So you're still riding the top guys a lot. And I know maybe there'll be some people saying like, well, they can't, that's not sustainable. And, every team is going to ride their the top line. I get that. Yes, you want your bottom guys to contribute in some fashion. I will take the top line doing what they're supposed to do and scoring, while the bottom line just doesn't give up anything.
Exactly.
And if you get a couple goals here and there from the bottom line, that's their job. You would like to see, we've seen it all year long where like the fourth line will dominate a shift, not score out of it, but dominate it. Keep the puck in the zone for 30, 45 seconds, maybe even a minute, and then turn it over to the top line guys and continue that. Like that's their job. Everything other than that is just extra if you get some points, which you want. Is it a concern? Maybe. But right now everything seems to be clicking.
And that's a extremely incredible point. Like we have to do a lot of this. We have to take out that 2022 Stanley Cup season. Like we're going to take that out as an outlier, but to have a team that has depth that doesn't hurt you, where you don't have to overcompensate for your depth, both forward and defensive. Like we used to remember the days of Nikita Zadorov. You knew he could body up on you, but the speed is an issue. Like
Yeah.
this Avalanche team has finally got their identity. And yes, you're not getting 3 goals out of every line every night. Nobody does. But you got your top line, they're performing. But lines 2 through 4, they're not hurting you. And when they're not hurting you, they could stay out there a little bit longer, even though you cut the 4th line off a lot. If you can have lines 2 and 3 hanging out there for a minute and a half, you're letting that top line rest and do what they have to do. Everybody understands what they're supposed to be doing on this team right now, and it's clicking and it's working. The power play, 2 for 4, that's starting to work. There is so much on this team that is coming together. And granted, you're not seeing them have their little skate around the ice after they get a goal, but they're working and they're not hurting where this team is going.
Yeah, definitely. And you know, we got to bring up Georgiev. He's a shutout against any team is good. A shutout against Vegas is very good. So we'll see. You know, now you got another one coming up against Toronto. So why don't we talk about that? Let's talk about this road trip and kind of look at the games and maybe give a little bit of prediction how we think that they're going to do. So why don't we talk about that? And we'll do that coming up next. All right, sir. Let's get to this final road trip here for the Avalanche because what do we got? 5-game road trip. Let me bring up the yes, we have a 5-game road trip. 3 of them in Canada. You got a back-to-back. Another game against Boston. And like I said, like the beginning of the month, you had that that overtime win against the Islanders, overtime win against Dallas, and then you lost the game to Florida. That's really been the one that's sticking out. Like, okay, that was ugly. Other than that, the win against Boston and the win against Vegas. So going into this 5-game road trip, you're feeling pretty darn good. Now, you don't want to get overconfident, but how are you feeling about where these 5 games could go for the Avs?
This Toronto game is going to set the tempo because honestly, this.
Oh, you're buzzing. Hang on.
No, this Toronto game, it's a proof of concept. How you build your team with this Mitch, like the Willie Nylander deal, what you're going to do with Mitch Marner, like this is proof of concept on proof of concept. You want to see, do you pay for like your talent or it's homegrown? It's a lot of wonderful things on the line when it comes to how your teams are constructed. You're in Toronto, the epicenter of hockey. You got Nathan McKinnon, Austin Matthews. It's one of those big matchups. It's a weekend game. All eyes on this matchup. If you drop it, you're going to be limping into Montreal, Ottawa. If you win it, you're going to be carrying that momentum the rest of the way. So this first game of this road trip is going to set the tempo. You want to see the Avalanche come out strong. Like they have shoddy goalie play right now.
Very much so.
Colorado, it's finding goalie play. So you hope to ride those waves, but don't let Toronto fool you. They can hurt you if they need to.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, like they're top heavy and their defense is very, very suspect. They don't have a really good defense, but they can score. Good Lord. I mean, it doesn't take a rocket science to know who they got. They're top heavy, but they can do a lot of damage. And I love your proof of concept thing. Maybe that's not proven this year, but maybe that's proven like in the years to come where like, okay, how do you build a team? Do you build a team the way that the Avalanche did it? And I'd love to have this conversation 5 years from now. When to see the results from Toronto and see the results from Colorado. And that's not necessarily in just cups. It's just like, regular season and how far these teams have gone in the playoffs, what they've been able to do in the offseason in terms of, free agents. I think we know where it's going with Toronto, at least for next year. But the years that follow, when the cap goes up, they're a fascinating team to follow. One, just because they're Toronto. And 2, because like they put themselves kind of a little bit in a corner, at least for the short term, of man, if they don't do it this year, next year there's not going to be much change on that team, or if there is, it's all lower level guys that might be asked to do more. It's crazy. It's crazy what's going on over there. So it is like it's going to be, I think from our vantage point, it's going to be like, look how the Avalanche built this team with all of these superstars, and it's showing compared to Toronto, which the jury is still out. Doesn't really seem like that's the way that you do it. Just load up on 4 guys. Who knows what they do with Marner? But that's the way that they wanted to go. We'll see.
And that's the thing,
know.
like Colorado's, it's a more of like a homegrown talent. Like they went out and they got Cale Makar, drafted him. He did the same with Miko and Nate and Gabe when he was healthy. Like this is a commitment to the long term, not just getting your top 3 or 4 guys and pitting them in forever and paying them, like mortgaging the arena to pay these guys. Like this is all team friendly deals. You just saw what the Avalanche pulled off with Taze. Like this is team friendly deals, buying into the concept instead of management buying into the talent. So it's going to be a fascinating like study on the game of hockey and how sustainable it is. But in the here and now, it was nice beating Boston. It's nice beating Vegas. It'd be really nice to beat Toronto
in Toronto. Tough place to play, obviously. So that'll be a good game. And like I said, day off, and then a back-to-back. Montreal and Ottawa. 2 teams that you should beat. Regular, it doesn't matter that it's a back-to-back. Ottawa is just, man, a lot of people were thinking they would take like the next step. I don't know if the next step was necessarily a playoff spot, but maybe being in the mix or competing for that last spot might have been the next step for them. And they have taken the next step backwards. Like I give the guys over at Locked On Sens a lot of credit, because they got to be just like, what does this team have to do to, it seems like everything was there. Everything was ripe to make that step. And it's just same old Sens right now. So
you
you
should have let Ryan Reynolds buy them.
Yeah. Man, I mean, something, but those are 2 games. No matter how the Toronto game goes, sure, you want to win that game because you're playing well. It's a good team. Those are the barometers on how you're playing against the good teams. Whatever happens to that, okay. Those next 2 games, even though they're back-to-backs, and you're gonna have your backup playing in you're gonna Prosvetov playing one of those 2 games, you really should still win both those games.
And see, it's almost like with the Colorado Avalanche where they're sitting in the league, how they're getting this momentum. How you mentioned like winnable games, it makes it double difficult, because Montreal, we talk about this all the time when the Avalanche go up against, for lack of a better term, inferior talent on paper. Montreal and Ottawa, this is one of the points of the season that you can, if you manage to squeak out a win against the Avalanche. Remember when we beat the Avalanche? They were going into that back-to-back. They were coming off that back-to-back. Like, this is where teams could also change their season off wins over Colorado, especially if you beat Toronto and then you go into Montreal and then you beat the Avalanche. That's a statement. And then you're going to be reeling into Ottawa. So, yes, they are winnable games, but they are must-win games. You can't afford a loss in that back-to-back and then expect to show up against Boston.
Yeah, and then how we're saying that was maybe one of the most fun games of the year so far. You're doing it again, this time on their ice, but I think beating them was a confidence booster for the Avs, obviously. So yeah, now they have confidence that they can go into their arena and steal another one. So we'll see how that one goes. You're laughing about it though.
Yeah, I wonder if there are going to be less Bruins fans at home than there were in Ball Arena.
Oh, you did it. Why not get Avalanche fans to show up?
Yeah, let's go
at TD Garden. Why don't you go there? Let's flip the script on it, man. But I don't know if that'll happen. But and then you finish it up with the Flyers, who are maybe overachieving this year, but they're not a pushover. So, and the Avs struggled with them last year. So how do you think this is all going to boil down, sir? You got 5 games. What's the record? What's the ones you win? What's the ones you lose?
I feel really good about Toronto. I feel like they're going to have one of those ugly games. Probably that Ottawa game. They're going to probably show out against Montreal, drop the Ottawa game, another overtime possible shootout in Boston, and then that Philly game. I just think it's going to be ugly.
I mean, and this is just total. You don't really know, right? So, Toronto is going to be a tough game, obviously. Um, you're playing well, though. That's the thing. So, it's going to be a good game. Would it surprise me if it goes into overtime? No. I'm really 50-50 on if they win that one. Not because they can't, just because it's a tough place to play.
Yeah.
But I feel good about the next 3 games. I feel good about the back-to-back just because you're the better team there. You are the better team between Montreal and Ottawa. So I feel good about those. I feel good about the Boston game. I do. I to me, if you're coming out of this thing 3-2, I think that the losses could be, I'll say in overtime, they lose to Toronto. And I think they lose the last one to Philly because it's a bookend the road trip with losses. Because it's the last one of the road trip. And after that, you have 3 days off. You got 3 days off before you're at home against Washington. So maybe you're looking forward to getting back home, a nice little rest, and not to say that you take the Flyers, for granted, but sometimes you just have a little bit of a letdown after you just you're going to play 3 games in 4 days. You've been on the road for over a week now. Maybe it's just a little bit, you let your guard down. And I just think that could be, you said it's an ugly game. I agree with you, but not the way that you think it's going to be. I think it's just going to be one of those frustrating games to watch as an Avs fan, because it's like, you should be beating this team, but okay, it's the end of a long road trip. I'm not expecting miracles out of that one. We'll see.
And those 3 days off are going to be like a mirage in the desert. And you just see 3 days off back at home. Gabe Landeskog on the practice ice doing triple axles and double sow cows. Like that's what you want, is that 3 days off. And then Washington, who is also kind of a lower tier opponent right now. That's what you want. It's going to be a 6-1 game against Philly, and they're going to lose, and it's going to be ugly.
We shall see. So the road trip shall begin, and it'll be a fun one to break all down when they play them. We'll be back and talking about each one of them. Starting next week. So enjoy the game over the weekend against Toronto. We'll be back on Monday to discuss that one. Hopefully it's a win, and then get ready for the back-to-back. So, all right, that's going to wrap it up for today, everybody. Thank you for tuning in and making it your first listen of the day. That's always appreciated. He is Mr. Shaggy Von Doom, Kyle Sullivan. I'm Chris Maselli. This is the Locked On Avalanche podcast. Have a good weekend. We'll see you guys on Monday.